Right, all guys, welcome to the pre-quarterfinals of KYS B 2016. Yeah. In the government side, we have Sembrong Ada. In the opposition side, we have KYS B. Before we continue, a few house rules. If you guys are having mobile phones, all of you, please keep it in silent mode. If you guys are going to use debate keeper to time your speeches, please keep it on silent mode as well. If you guys are going to say here and support the people who are speaking in front, please do it, if possible, in between speeches rather than during speeches. If you guys are going to have discussions among benches, please keep it at a low note. We want to listen to the people who are speaking in front. That's the point of debating. So without further ado, I now call upon the government side of the motion. This also believes that Malaysia should stop importing laborers from Indonesia until they reform their environmental.
You will see in our current status quo that how Indonesia actually is one of the ASEAN countries who actually the countries who actually lead of the environmental pollution, environmental problems at very first place, right? So because before we move on to my case, but I will explain to you what is our side burden. In our side, at Thbt, we will prove to you on how by stop importing the labor from Indonesia, we make the Indonesia will lead them to make the changes at the end of the year. So, what's the problems that are happening in our current status quo? You will see in our current status quo on how Indonesia actually make their company go to with the big fire or so forth. And at the end of the day, the haze actually happening. And this kind of problem actually happen annually, meaning it's happening every year. And what's the harm that who actually affected by this, right? The whole country of the ASEAN, the whole ASEAN community, right? Meaning other countries also affected by the haze that this Indonesia actually do at the very first place, right? And these problems actually really severe. Why? Because other society, which this third party, actually also affected. Their health actually in danger at the very first place, right? So that's why there's problems that happen in our current status, right? And next, we actually do the soft stance towards this Indonesia on how, because we see that on how ASEAN community actually have urged this Indonesia to actually for many years, but later, right? But we see by doing this soft stance, this Indonesia doesn't give any signs of efforts to actually make changes in Indonesia. They doesn't do anything. They doesn't do any changes about the environment problems at the end of the day. So that's how in our side we want to propose to you a hard stance, which in our side it will lead them, and by stopping importing this labor to to enter Malaysia at the end of the day, it will help. At least we actually will make them indirectly. We will make them to make the changes in their country at the very first place, right? So, yeah. So, move on how we in our side we will ensure that the changes will happen. We believe that this Indonesia actually is rely on the labor forces to get incomes in Malaysia at the very first place. And we see that Malaysia on how it is a major country which import labor at the very first place, right? And at the end of the day, if the government actually choose this Malaysia actually choose to actually stop this labor to enter Malaysia, meaning to stop from entering Malaysia, at the end of the day, this all this labor won't get jobs, and we see that it will give a severe, it will make this, the economy will be severe. Why? Because it is one of the incomes that these people actually need at the very first place. Right? So once we actually stop them to get those incomes, to have a better life in Indonesia, so we believe that this is how we push them directly to actually cater to the problems that they have made that actually affected to the whole society that are not innocent at the very first place. Right? Sit down. Yep. So move on to my first idea on what should Malaysia actually prioritize more in today's year. So we know that Malaysia should prioritize their own citizens at the very first place. Right? Why? Because if we see in current status quo, because these problems that that is actually happening, which affect the health problem and whatnot, right? Because it leads to thousands of lives actually have been suffered. Right? This third party actually affected. They're the innocent people who are not involved in those kind of things, but their life actually suffered and suffer from bronchitis, and even worse, there's some of groups actually die at the end of the day, right? Because of the haze, because of environmental problems that has been caused by this Indonesia, right? Yeah, and even worse, there's also these certain groups who actually need to evacuate from their house because the index of the air pollution is too high at the end of the year. There's problems. There's problems that we see in current status quo that Malaysia actually happening. So we see that on how the severity of the problems and the effects is really severe. So with that, Malaysia as the own government need to protect their own citizens at the very first place, because we see that those Indonesia actually doesn't care about its citizens. So we as a Malaysia should need to actually take an effort to take an actions to actually save our own society. We as a government who will actually take the responsibility towards our society. So we see that to do this kind of things is a better way, is the best way to help our students to have a better life at the end of the day. So what is the outcome? Right? In our side, we will create a better literacy. How? Because at the end of the day, in our side, Malaysia will send an idea to the ASEAN community that we will not actually comply to any damage to the environment. Right? Meaning, we will actually promote the ideology that to actually save the environment. To save the environment is really dire, because we see in current go on how this lot of government actually doesn't care about these environment problems. It doesn't care about this kind of things. And with that, this one of the ways that we need to take to actually cater to this kind of problems at the end of the year, to have a better life with a better surroundings. Go beside government.
I thank the Prime Minister. Now we can call on the leader coalition to start the case here.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 6 or 7 minutes from Prime Minister's speech, I believe that when they started blabbering about how Malaysia's haze, the haze in Malaysia and the condition in other countries in the ASEAN community have been happening, you believe that yes, the haze problem is a big problem in society, and we also from side opposition want to solve this problem. What we believe that on our side, by stopping to import this labor from Indonesia, we believe that how this problem will get worse under your side, and we believe that that's how we're going to solve this problem at the end of the day. We believe that it's very obscene to actually like stop importing these labors from Indonesia in the first place. We believe that how our burden under our side will be like worse under their side, because they're going to like make the situation worse for Indonesia, because Indonesia will take like other ways to actually make the economy bigger. We believe that how Indonesia is a country that depends on their like, economy and their labor. We believe that how it's not our we believe that it's not our burden on how we're going to prove other alternatives, that how we're going to stop this problem at the end of the day, but we believe that how under their paradigm it's going to be worse at the end of the day. So we're going to prove to you how and like on the side we're going to prove how status quo is actually okay. So what's our stance on the side of this? We believe that by stopping importing labor, we believe that cutting and slashing and burning and haste, the problem that they brought up, is going to be much more worse. Few rebuttals towards government side. We believe that how when the idea of them how Malaysia stops importing labor from Indonesia is basically going to stop the idea of for them to cut and from their economic from the environmental problems and energy. We believe that how they didn't provide a linkage. All they say is that how it's going to promote the other ideology that from Malaysia we don't agree on your stance of like slashing and burning, so we're going to stop importing like labor from your country. We believe that they don't send a sort of linkage on how it's going to give an ideology, because we believe that how Indonesia in this stance, if they're going to care about their economy right now. We believe that how they're going to make their economy the major priority right now. We believe that how when Malaysia stops importing, they're going to still continue these bad sorts of environmental problems that's going to happen in the ASEAN community at the end of the day. Sit down, man. So moving on to my arguments on how we believe that we deny on the characterization of oppositions of government side. We believe that how labor is a small thing, and labor is like a small thing, and it's not effective to deter actually the problem that's coming up from Indonesia right now. We believe that how Indonesia doesn't even like give a crap about how like they're going to like how the labor from Malaysia importing is going to like affect them at the end of the day. So let's debate on government's paradigm. If they believe that how even though that it is big at the end of the day, how labor is big to Indonesia at the end of the day, we believe how the practicality of their case is not going to work at the end of the day. We believe that when their side believes that labor is actually a big thing under Indonesian society, their actions will actually backfire under their own case. Why? We believe that when you take something important from the economy of Indonesia, when labor is something big under their side, when labor is something major under their side, where it's a major source of income at the end of the day for Indonesia's economy, we believe that how they will not care about like if Malaysia is giving an idea that I should stop slashing and burning, but we believe at the end of the day they will continue to slash and burn these trees, and they're going to like worsen the idea of case at the end of the day. We believe that when these people from other countries don't give them the source of economy that they want to get, we believe that they will take other alternatives and other steps to actually increase the idea of how it's going to benefit their economy. And we believe that by Indonesia, from what we have seen right now, is going to be slashing and burning. We believe that slashing and burning is going to be much more harmful and detrimental towards other countries in the ASEAN community. We believe that how the harm and the loss like Indonesia is going to compensate the harm of the loss of they didn't like Malaysia not importing other like their labor from other countries anymore. So they're going to take another alternative, but it might be harmful towards other countries in the ASEAN community. We believe that how when these sorts of ideas where they do implement this idea, it's going to be like harmful towards society, where their idea and their alternative is going to be much worse. And we believe that on their side, where they want to take a step towards a risk where they can worsen their own stance, which is to like stop haste and burning at the end of the day, we believe that under their paradigm, they're going to make it worse. We believe that on our side, we're going to prove to you why like status quo is already okay, and why they shouldn't take this other alternative to begin with. So Moving on to my second argument on how we believe that status quo is not doing much harm, and we believe that status quo is actually improving the state at the end of the day. So we're going to prove to you in my argument now is like how where their alternative is actually not going to work and is going to be much harmful. Number two, how status quo is actually doing something. Number one, where they deny the fact that international pressure is not working on a society, where Indonesia is still slashing and burning. We believe that when they characterize this to the extreme, where they believe that Indonesia doesn't actually deter this problem at the end of the day, we believe that yes, even though that it's slow, even though that international pressure from the ASEAN community where they did do discourse, where they did discuss to stop the idea of haze and burning haze at the end of the day, we believe that even though that the process is slow, we believe that it is working in society right now, where Indonesia is taking steps to stop slashing and burning, but still improve their agriculture products at the end of the day. So we believe that at our side, we have seen for the past few years that Indonesia is improving on how they're going to stop this at the end of the day. So even if that is getting slow, let's look on government side paradigm. Even though that is getting slow, we believe that on their side, where they want to take a risk, where they want to take a burden, where they want to stop importing labor, where they're going to harm Indonesia, and Indonesia is going to take other steps of how to improve their economy. We believe that it would rather we take it slow rather than taking a risk of this thing getting more harmful at the end of the day, where the idea of slashing and burning and haze and affecting all other countries in the ASEAN community is going to be much harmful. So if you vote with the side that cares about the ASEAN community and how we're not going to take a risky step at the end of the day, go with side opposition. Thank you.
Leader of opposition. Now let's invite the Deputy Prime Minister to extend the case.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the opposition side is not entirely engaging with our case. We already characterized to you on how by implementing this motion, this will eventually severely harm the economy of Indonesia. Thus, making Indonesia want to actually comply with us if they want to actually make their labor to be accepted at the end of the day. So let's see what the opposition side want to argue in this debate. Right? They want to argue that they want to stick with the current status quo, where the only positive contribution coming from them is that they want to stick with the current status quo, and they believe that even if it is slow, that the current status quo is already enough in order for us to actually rely to wait Indonesia to change. The problem is that, ladies and gentlemen, this progression is not. This progression is very slow. It takes decades for them to actually just improve themselves. And we believe that the improvement that they make is not sufficient enough. The improvement that they make is not sufficient enough to actually deter all the lives that are already being lost at the end of the day. We believe that in the period of 7 to 6 years before, we believe that lots of lives already being lost at the end of the day. And on second analysis, we believe that it is very time-sensitive issues. We believe that we need to solve this problem as soon as possible, because they themselves consider the fact that this case is something that is very problematic, but they never consider the fact that the current status quo, which is already small progression, is already problematic to begin with. Sit down. We believe that these time-sensitive issues mean that we need to act as soon as possible in order for us to actually protect much more life at the end of the day. We cannot rely on the slow changes coming from their side, because right now, the more we wait, meaning that the more people will suffer of bronchitis, suffer of asthma, and eventually die. more people will eventually be relocated and evacuated from their house, losing their life just because Indonesia actually don't want to actually comply with our policies. Right? We believe that it is very unnecessary on their side. Right? For that, yes.
In the long run, Indonesia will then resort to slashing and burning because it improves their economy. Because they lose their major sector of economy, which is labor. Justify then how your harms are mutually exclusive.
So we already told you on how by implementing this motion, it's already we already stated to you on how when their major economy is actually in labor rights, because they already consider the fact that major economy is labor. When we are already taking the major economy, that is why we believe that Indonesia will eventually comply with us at the end of the day. So let's see on why we believe that Malaysia should stop importing labor from Indonesia. Right? Another thing is when we already conceded to you that this when we believe that Malaysia should actually prioritize the effects on their citizens. We already concede to the fact that these millions of lives were actually lost is lives who are actually innocent. Their life will actually have no relation to all of this slashing and burning, but they have to suffer all of these instances. Yes, I never responds and never engage to this point. I believe that the problem that Malaysia should actually prioritize these citizens first compared to other types of compared to other citizens there's no some sort of responses coming from them of whatsoever. So let's see on why we believe that we should stop importing labor from Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to consider the fact that by importing labor from Indonesia, meaning that Indonesia themselves will get more benefits from this. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, even though Indonesia has already received benefits from us to many of these years, they still eventually do slashing and burning at the end of the day. Right? Meaning, Indonesia have no incentive for them to actually do slashing to stop slashing and burning. We have already conceded to you that Indonesia have the ability to actually make policies, for example, like policies to stop this slashing and burning, to stop these MNCs from slashing and burning in their countries. But the problem is Indonesia never do that. And we believe that by implementing this motion, we believe this will create an incentive for Indonesia for them to actually better improve their for them to actually reform their economy at the end of the day. And on the second point, we believe that why do we believe that all of these benefits that Indonesia is actually giving, but at the same time they still harm us? We believe that it is very unjustified for us to comply with all of these instances. Because right now, ladies and gentlemen, we have to consider the fact that the reason why we want to stop all of this importing is because because it increases the complicity of the state. Because right now, ladies and gentlemen, when we eventually keep on importing labor from Indonesia, we keep on giving benefits towards Indonesia, we believe that is something that is far more worse. Because right now, you are actually giving benefits to people who severely harms yourself at the end of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this creates less representation of government of Malaysia to its citizens. Because ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the main incentive for government is actually to protect its citizens to begin with. Right? So ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the government should actually stop actually endorsing lots of other things, lots of things that will eventually harm their countries. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how we believe that by keep on giving benefits towards the main countries who have no incentive to change and who have no incentive for them, to change and no incentive to actually reform their environmental practices is going to increase the complicity of the state. So ladies and gentlemen, what is the outcomes of this? We believe that it is very important for Malaysia to get the support of these individuals. When the state is being seen as someone who has been complicit, when the state is seen as someone who actually is not as my representative, is not representing my core, my major interest, this will actually deter the support given by the citizen to begin with. Right? We believe that all of this reason, ladies and gentlemen, but before that, let's see what government have already told you. Right? We already told you on how my first week I already told you on how it is very important for Malaysia to first prioritize the citizen and never care and never eventually prioritize the economy of Indonesia. And we believe that this is collective harms that are already being done compared to the exclusive benefits that Indonesia actually receive. And we already said to you on how it will increase the complicity of the state at the end of the day.
The main problem coming from government side is that they assume labor is the main economy of Indonesia. But I believe that the main economy of Indonesia itself is that they have agriculture at the end of the day. So why would they, the main question coming from a side opposition is that why would they give up a main part of economy, which is agriculture, for something for labor at the end of the day? And second thing, we prove to you how even though labor is considered to be a big part of the economy, it won't be practical enough. Why? Because first things first, the idea of Indonesia being more resourceful in the sense of they have more jungles compared to other people. They can gain more economy in that sense by slashing and burning compared to labor at the end of the day, and they will be forced to do these kinds of slashing and burning to compensate the amount of labor they have lost at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, they won't solve this environmental harm. They will actually make it much more worse for Indonesia to find much more alternatives to harm the environment to get back the economy. So first things first, then the second thing, we came up with one to talk to you on how it's the best interest of Malaysia to stop the hate. First things first, I'm going to prove to you on how it is not the best interest of Malaysia, because we tell you on how labor is important to Malaysia. It's going to be integrated in my arguments later on. Then third thing, the major flaw is that they are assuming on how making economic severe. They didn't give a linkage on how making Indonesia's economic severe. They will suddenly listen to Malaysia at the end of the day. They need to provide a linkage to it, because we've proven to you on how there are various ways Indonesia can deal with this economic severity. For example, they can do more slashing and burning at the end of the day. They wouldn't opt for labor at the end of the day, and Muaz already proved to you so much on that, but they still fail to understand this. So first argument on how it's detrimental to both countries, Malaysia and Indonesia. First things first, on Malaysia, because we characterize on how labor itself is important to Malaysia, because we depend much on it. We depend on the infrastructure of buildings and self-needs. So by taking away these things, taking away labor itself from Malaysia is detrimental. Why? The urbanization of Malaysia is threatened. Because we, as the opposition, will not take the trade-off of taking the whole problem of whole benefits of labor from Malaysia, because we can see how status quo itself is already okay. We will not take the stake of losing your labor for environmental harm, because we believe on how the international pressure is already existent. You can see how it's already affected the whole ASEAN community. The whole ASEAN community has already pressurized Indonesia enough. You can see how they're changing every year. The Korea has helped in trying to regulate much more better rules and regulations for people who do this slashing and burning. It may occur annually, but still it's reducing year by year. We believe that this is a better alternative than this. So second thing, how is it harmful to Indonesia? Before I move on, yes.
The problem is Malaysia having no labor forces. We believe that we can take labor forces from a lot of countries, for example, like Bangladesh or Indonesia or Vietnam.
They're assuming that most of we can just get it from other countries at the end of the day. No, wrong, because most of labor are dependent on Indonesia itself. When you see how labor, when you mention to us on how labor is, when you mention to us how labor can get it from other countries, no, because at the end of the day we depend much on Indonesia itself. And if you and this same. If they wanted to say to us like that, then we can see how Indonesia can sell their laborers to other countries instead. So these kinds of things are also backfiring at the end of the day, because they're just saying on how like Malaysia can just get laborers from other countries. We can also see how Indonesia can also get laborers from other countries. That's not mutually exclusive. No, we can't deal with that. So second thing was on how we're not going to take the stake of making Indonesia grow. So let's assume we take the side where Indonesia will go for economic depression and severity. First things first, will harm a lot of individuals in Malaysia. Why? Because we describe individuals in Malaysia as individuals in Indonesia as being poor. So you're taking away their
jobs at the end of the day. At the end of the day, they don't have food on the table. They can't live, and they have to suffer throughout their whole life because they don't have any source of income. We don't want to take the state for the sake of environment at the end of the day. We believe that the development of these people are much more important than environment itself, because we believe on how we rather have. We don't want someone starving by like a little child starving at the streets just because of some major problem that you can actually cure, like haze, like you can just go to the hospital that you can cure, while these people will have to suffer every day without having a job. Before I move on, yes, last one.
As the government of Malaysia, is it your priority to the health of your citizen or to the well-being of Indonesia?
We talked about how is the best interest for Malaysia to go for this labor. Why? Because we already told you how this labor is dependent. The laborers of because in outside you have much more sympathy towards the Indonesian people. Second thing, it's much more against the best better interest for Malaysia, because we told you how we depend much on laborers for our infrastructure and and so on. So first thing first, the NLD keep on and the major problem with this identity kept on bringing up on how status quo is not okay. Because we tell you on how international pressure and international pressure itself is already working, because there's always an Asian summits every year. These kinds of Asian summits actually pressurize Indonesia, because we know how Indonesia is the main source of all these things at the end of the day. For instance, like today we experienced this. If you know it's slow, really how it's somehow slow, at least we have the long-term benefits of these people living right there, rather than have people dying in the streets because they die of hunger right in Indonesia. Rather have these people living because we rather take the stake of people. We rather have people living rather than having people sick at the end of the day. We take that stake of people sick. So in conclusion, let's take both parallels. First thing, we've already proven to you how their side would work. First thing, because by putting in economic pressure on them, they'll actually offer alternate ways to actually go and rebuild the economic status, such as slashing money. But even if they manage to make Indonesia go for environmental practices, it will be much more harmful. We've already proved how it harms the individuals in Indonesia itself, how it harms Malaysia itself, because you don't have labor in Malaysia at the end of the day. So we rather don't take the stake, rather take our stake where environment is improving on the other side. Well, users go slowly, but it's still improving. And it will also save the lives of the individuals in Indonesia and lives in Indonesia. So go and compare which side is much more better. So go with the side that actually cares for these individuals in Indonesia and Malaysia, actually cares for the environment at the end of the day. With that, thank you.
Next, here.
As a citizen of whether Indonesia or Malaysia, I need the very air that I need to breathe. I need someone to take action on these people who actually making me, the innocent people who are not involved in any economy of these people are actually arguing. I do need someone to take action. But in their case, these people are not taking any action. They are just okay with the current status quo. They are so afraid to take any risk that can consider to have better settlements at the end of the day. The thing is that these people are actually taking benefits in my side. They are actually taking away the very air that I need to breathe because of the situation that they actually propose at the end of the day. The problem in the government, the problem in the opposition side is that they are still not. The problem is that they are still not considering with the situation that we are actually proposed at the end of the day. Even though they said that there will be progress, we don't see how the progress that they are saying is actually better than our side. So move on to my first issue. Will Indonesia change? The opposition side said that let's just go with the current status quo, let's just not take any risk because Indonesia is uncontrollable, and even if we stop importing labor, nothing will change, thus make it worse. That is what they said. But government team said that change after we implement this motion because Indonesia rely on labor forces. The reason why we say this is because in the first level of analysis, because of the international relation that we have between Indonesia and Malaysia. Not the reason why we actually stop importing labor is because that is the only reason that Malaysia and Indonesia have. That is the very hard title that there is a very subject that tighten Indonesia and Malaysia at the end of the day. Please sit down. And that is why when we are actually stop importing this labor, it actually will make Joko Widodo a citizen of Indonesia from stopping that actually Malaysia is actually taking action at the end of the day. Because we have stated to you that this by stop importing this labor, this is the hard stance that we have. This is the only action that Malaysia can do towards the Indonesia because no other people are actually taking action. So Malaysia are going to take action, even though the Asian community are actually taking action, but Indonesia are so afraid to sign the agreement. The thing is that by now the thing is that after we implement this debate, Indonesia will spark the idea that Malaysia is actually taking action on protecting the environment. But on their side, the only reason why they don't want these things to happen is because they're afraid that Indonesia are going to take action on slashing and burning even worse. The thing is that they do move on to the second question. We think time emergency issue is very important in this situation.
Yeah.
The health of the citizen, the health of people who are Indonesia and Malaysia are very important in our case. Even though these people are going to even though if this motion implement, they are going to slash and burn it even more. We don't see how the pressure that we put. We don't see how Indonesia are actually full, that they don't see the pressure that actually Malaysia are putting. We don't see how this pressure are not going to change the mind of the Joko Widodo. We don't see how this pressure are actually not such as simple as the opposition side are saying, because such as simple as that, because we don't see how Indonesia are not going to take at least some action after we stop importing this labor. Because before that, go.
If we concede to the fact that ASEAN summits effects are working slow. If you say that ASEAN summit's pressure is working slow, how is international pressure for Malaysia going to work under your side? We would rather do an ASEAN summit where it's more effective, but there's more countries denying.
Because you say economy for Indonesia is very important, so that's why we use this economy method to stop them, to give them pressure at the very high level, so that they will think that this economy is very important on their side. Because we believe that the economy of Indonesia, because we believe that government are putting the economy is at the very high level, so that's why we use this economy. Because on their side, when we implement this agreement, there will be no pressure towards the economy, as you said. So in your side, when you are saying that economy is very important, economy is the main reason for this Indonesia to move on their life. So that's why we use this by stopping the importing labor, which will lead to the economy that you guys are saying. So that's why in our side the production are going even more than your side, because you said that to just go with the KYS B, we see that in the past 3 years, Indonesia are actually burning and slashing, and then in the next 3 years there will be more slashing and burning, because no people are actually taking action, no people are actually putting pressure on them, no people are actually putting pressure on the economy that this government are actually safe at the end of the day. Go.
Indonesia is a country full of jungles and natural resources. So prove to us on how they will not use these natural resources and jungles to compensate with the amount of economy deprivation you put towards them.
So you need to consider in our side that this economy is very important to the government. Even though you are slashing and burning, the thing is that in our side, we actually putting pressure on these people. We actually putting pressure on these people to use other way that will not make only Malaysia to prevent them, to push them from their relation. We don't want this international relation. We don't want international. This Indonesia are not. We don't want Indonesia going to be just safe and sit comfortably, because not only Malaysia are avoiding them, after this, the other countries are also avoiding them at the end of the day. Because we believe that the time emergency issue is very important, so that's why we want this to be this progress to work even harder in our situation rather than them. Just because they said that, because we believe that the economy attitude that they are implementing are going to lead to the progression at the end of the day. We do believe that the health situation, we do consider that Indonesia, we do consider that Indonesia are actually facing this kind of situation, but we believe that environment, we believe that the health of people are important also towards Malaysian government. So with that, I thank you.
Guys, before we move on, if people are going to leave the room or come into the room, please doing in between speeches and not during speeches. Okay.
Cutting and slashing is bad. Air is bad. We believe that air pollution as a whole is bad and detrimental to begin with. But there are some things that will happen in the long run that we are not willing to happen if it's in the school. And I'll further elaborate to you why later in my issues. But before I move on, let's re-clarify and refocus a bit. Okay, look, both sides characterize you and how Indonesia is an extremely economically deprived country. And both sides also told you how Malaysia holds like a bigger or superior power over Indonesia as a whole. Okay, but we have to concede to the fact that and also both sides also told you on how they wanted to push for better change to begin with, but sides had no answer. We told you that even if you push for better change now, in the long run, something bad will happen to you. And I'll prove to you why later in my issues and rebuttals. But before I move on, a few things I'll do in my speech today. Firstly, one issue coming from both sides, and a few rebuttals that don't actually fit into that main contention, right? Because let's look at the first rebuttal to begin with. They told you on how, like, Indonesia, the biggest part of Indonesia is the urgency to have like labor inside, to import labor into Malaysia at the end of the day. We tell you, yeah, we accept the characterization that labor is an extremely big thing for Indonesia to begin with, and we tell you that this is necessarily harmful, because the moment in which you take the biggest part and the most crucial part of the economy, which is labor to begin with, then you would then rather find other things to like resort to, i.e. then you would like rather have more open burning, which would then further harm which would then improve the economy, and then you would rather opt into more cutting and slashing, which would then also improve the economy. So we then see how they didn't, in which they didn't respond to us from both my speakers. We tell you that this is a necessarily important issue that they need to tackle, but they didn't, right? But they also told you how second rebuttal on how they told you like time sensitivity is an extremely important issue today. Look, we tell you that we compare both sides, right? Under your side, we bring immediate change and time sensitivity. But under our change, we tell you that we have better long-term benefits to begin with. This is when I move into my issues, right? Because the first issue is whether or not status quo is working or not. Look, when moving POI to you on whether or not like status quo is working or not, seeing that if ASEAN summits already had international pressure to begin with, then why under your side would Malaysia then be like a better superpower over ASEAN to begin with, right? Because even if Malaysia holds like a biggest part of the economy or whatever, not, we tell you that ASEAN, which is like an extremely big superpower that they didn't even listen to, why would then they listen to Malaysia at the end of the day, right? We tell you that the premise of their argument then fails. But moving on, that even if but we tell you that necessarily like status quo is happening and is working to its very best to begin with. Why? Because we tell you that when international pressure happens, organic change will then happen. No matter how long it will take, we would rather have them slow changes rather than under your side. When in the long-term future, then they will then resort to more like cutting and slashing. We don't see the logic of your argument then. But then they also told you about how Malaysia should do it for the best interest of itself. Look, we don't necessarily tell you that Malaysia would then completely neglect its citizens and their right for their air to breathe or whatever not, right? But we tell you that if it's necessarily extremely harmful, if it's necessarily extremely important for you to solve this, then we tell you that like other alternatives in status quo are extremely working fine, right? Because tell you that we're not willing to have long-term benefits for Malaysia in of itself. When you then have more cutting and slashing in the near future, we are not willing to risk that. But B, look, we don't necessarily tell you that Malaysia should do it in the best interest of the economy. Are you then saying that like a poor kid in Indonesia whose mother is working as a maid in Malaysia should then rather die and starve on the streets? We tell you that this is necessarily going to treat Malaysia as like the most inhumane side of the world, right? And we tell you like this is not necessarily some trade-off that we're willing to take. Then like necessarily all other countries are then going to like avoid contact with Malaysia as a whole, because then you rather these poor kids and these poor families whose mothers and whose fathers are working as laborers in Malaysia, then they are then deprived of jobs. And we then tell you why it's necessarily harmful. And thirdly, they told you how Indonesia would then be complicit to Malaysia at their end. Look, the urgency of Indonesia is to improve the economy, given that their economy is extremely bad. So they would then rather not care about taking care of the economy as a whole, because then rather than them, when you take away the economy, when you take away the crucial part of the economy, they would rather think of the economy first rather than improving the state of the environmental state, right? You say then that's necessarily harmful. But then moving on to my impromptu issue that I just came up with, right? Because he told you on how like organic change is not as good as immediate hard starts. But before I move on, yes.
Which one should you protect the most? The people who are dying every day or people getting jobs?
No, necessarily, you don't immediately die out. Okay, look, let us compare both sides, right? They told you on how Malaysia in of itself should be protected because of the air that you breathe in is not safe. If it's such a big problem for you, then we'd rather like you have other alternatives to work for Malaysia in of itself. Because rather than you taking this immediate hard stance that I was originally about to explain, we would rather, in the long run, Malaysia not receiving its effects, right? Because look, they told you how organic change, how in our worst case scenario, organic change is the worst thing that can happen, right? Because they told you how progression is not as fast as under their side and it's rather slow, right? But we already told you countless number of times that time sensitivity that long-term benefits defeat the purpose of time sensitivity to begin with, right? Because tell you that the immediate hard stance that you are then willing to take would then immediately backfire to you at the end game. And these are a few things that we are not willing to take. These are a few things and risks that we are not willing to take. So go with the side that actually cares and go with the side that embraces humanity.
Open mic and debate outside later.
The burdens that the government side had to prove were two simple burdens, but I'll prove to you why at the end of the debate they didn't prove why any of this. First and first, they had to prove on how will their case work. They came up with saying on how by putting out labor, by stopping labor import, by stopping labor import, you suddenly have this economic depression. But there was no logical link. Because we questioned them on why would they suddenly be incentivized to stop slashing and burning. Because we characterized you on how Indonesia has lots of resources and trees. Why would they opt for this to compensate the amount of economy they lose? Second thing, let's take a characterization where labor is a small thing, like we have brought forward. Because we characterize labor is a small thing. And another question is, why would they be incentivized for such a small economy factor compared to slashing and burning, which contributes to a much more bigger economy? So they didn't engage in this. They didn't go inside our paradigm where the labor is small, but we actually engaged the opposite side and engage in the paradigm where labor is a big thing. So and under this side, they only it would work. It will somehow work if this labor is a big thing. But we characterize our labor as a small thing. So let's assume it's a small thing. It will not work under this side. So we would rather take that stance of we will not take the risk of losing labor compared to not working. Second, on how even if it were to work, how is it not harmful for Malaysia and Indonesia? We need to respond this so immediately, because these were the two. Because the harms that we already pushed towards them were really harmful to the extent of dying in Indonesia. They didn't prove to us how these harms will exist. Because we've proven to you on how in Malaysia itself, Malaysia will be seen as biggest because we let people die in Malaysia without having jobs. We don't want to take this stance where Malaysia, where people stop having ties with Malaysia because you're seen as some sort of country which doesn't care about people. And second thing, we argue on how Malaysia itself would have less urbanization at the end of the day. We would rather not take this stance. Second thing on Indonesia itself, because how is it harmful to Indonesia? Because let's say they take their stance where labor is a big thing, you lose a big part of the economic center. It will be harmful towards people underground in Indonesia, because these people depend lots of money. They are poor individuals, so they need this money to just live at the end of the day. So under this side, they're okay with people dying at the streets, compared to people who, on the outside, compared to outside where we're okay with people, where on the outside we're going to make these people continue living at the end of the day, while compared to their side. So let's take a compare. And then we wanted to push a burden to us on how our alternative will work. This is not our burden to prove, but anyway, we'll take it instead and prove to you how we've already proven to you how status quo is working at the end of the day. Because we tell you on how status quo is already okay, because there's so many international pressure in itself. Mine and Moise has already told you on how the international by having only Malaysian pressure isn't going to be enough, because the Asian summits and such on are already enough to pressurize Indonesia. If this kind of summits cannot pressurize Indonesia, how is just one country? How will one country work at the end of the day? This kind of pressure in status quo itself is already enough, because you can see how there are changes gradually every year. So even though our changes are slow, we tell you how we will provide a better long-term benefit compared to the side where people will be dying on the streets every day. At the end of the day, Malaysia is seen as because no one wants to go to Malaysia. But on the other side, we still improve environment, we still maintain Malaysia's reputation, we still have people living and not dying because of starvation at the end of the day. So we're going to decide that has humanity itself in itself with this thing.
Yeah.
Dr. Kolej and debate area.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the opposition side is actually providing us with a problem mismatch solution. Because at the first, when we characterize to you that the current status quo is already very much severe, that we need to take that we need to actually do something to change the current status quo. But they came up here and say that they consider the fact that the current status quo is bad, but the only solution is stick to the current status quo. We believe it is something that is very much it's something that is a very problem mismatch solution to begin with. So on my speech today, I'm going to first I'm going to talk about how the technicalities of the debates, and also I'm going to talk about on how which issues that we are actually going to do this debate. First of all, we believe that their side is actually inconsistent, because Because right now they are inconsistent in actually determining whether labor is something that is big or whether labor is something that is small. Because right now, ladies and gentlemen, they say to us that labor is something that is very small, thus making Indonesia will not comply to us to begin with. But then suddenly they come up with the second speaker. They stated to us that when we do not give labor towards Indonesia, people in Indonesia will starving to death. People on the ground will starving to death, and people poverty will eventually increase at the end of the day. Really, something that is very inconsistent. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you consider the fact that labor is not something that's big, how can your harms will be materialized at the end of the day, right? So really is something that's far more worse under their side. So let's look on the policy of which sides better helps solve the problem of environment. Right? First of all, we explained to you that it's already harmful in society, in the school. We need to actually outside. We want to give hard stances because we cannot wait for more people to actually die. The other side, they're okay with more people actually dying because at least we actually have more. Actually, we have more progress. Right? We believe there is something that is unjustified. The other side, they claim to us by actually implementing this motion, this will eventually increase slashing and burning in Indonesia at the end of the day. We believe that is something that is very unjustified. Because if they consider the fact that if they themselves consider the fact that we already consider the fact that Indonesia will change because the pressure that we give them is because the pressure they do slashing and burning. How can Indonesia, if economy is something important for them, if they want the economy, how can they eventually do more slashing and burning in order to get economy to get benefits from us? Which is something that is illogical to begin with. But even if they themselves consider the fact that this policy will work because they themselves say that Indonesia, when we don't provide Indonesia with all of these instances, citizens of Indonesia will die, thus making us will perceive as someone who is bad. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that if it is so effective that it affects the whole society of Indonesia, we believe that all of this will eventually make Indonesia, in order to change and in order to actually comply with us at the end of the day. Right? This is something that is very justified at the end of the day. And they want to consider us that ASEAN pressure is much more bigger compared to Malaysia pressure. We believe that historically ASEAN pressure is only pressure and there is no physical action given to Indonesia. Right? We believe that by actually harming the economy of Indonesia, which is the physical harms given towards Indonesia itself, we believe that this will eventually far more greater incentive for Indonesia to change at the end of the day. So let's talk about on how on the priority of Malaysia. Right? We are on our side. We believe that we should, as the governors of Malaysia into this debate, we should actually prioritize the citizen of our countries compared to other countries to begin with. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, they never concede to the fact, they never engage with us on these points. We believe that even if a citizen of Indonesia is actually dying, we believe that is not our fault. It is the fault of the Indonesian government themselves who actually harming the countries, who actually harming the economy of the country, that's making people dying every single day. We believe that the sole reason for us is to actually prioritize our own country. And on second analysis, when they say that Malaysia will have the lesser urbanization because they have lesser workforce at the end of the day, we believe that it is not a problem because we can still take a lot of other labor to begin with. Indonesia depends on us more compared to we depends on Indonesia. With that, I think.
Cross, shake hands, everyone leave the room. Yeah.